Hello, hello, hello. Nice setting, and not so many people feels cozy for once here. It's Friday afternoon. I have a cold, so lower your expectation. You're gonna get what you're gonna get. I'm kidding. It's gonna be good. So, topic of today is gonna be about UX into large structure and company that actually acquire a lot of company, and it's about scale, really scaling up UX. So. It doesn't really scale well, to be very honest, UX, especially when you try to actually have foundation at the center, but then you have a lot of satellite groups, in the different divisions. And especially gets quite complex when the numbers are so high, right? I work for that company, Abloy. I guess some of you might know the company itself, but we have more than 300 companies. We acquire like 20 companies every year. So conditions keep on changing all the time. And I think while this is great, because it means that the business is running well, and we're profitable, but at the same time, it really brings in a lot of responsibility on the UX function, and also a lot of complication when it comes to how do we handle that well. On top of that, we also have a lot of brands. 190, as we count them today, might actually change by the time, I'm saying this. We are trying to reduce them. Reduce brands is very difficult. It takes time, but still that's another complication when actually handling UX. On top of that, we have 7 divisions. You can imagine all the things that goes to it, right? Business, BU, BA, business area, business units, and so on and so forth. And finally, we got 55 UX designers. You have to imagine that when I started 7 years ago, we were 4. So that's good. It's not even close to a good number, though, right? We know, I guess we all know, that 1 out of 7, 1 out of 10 is a good number, right? 1 UX designer, every 7 also developer, that's quite of a good number. We are far below that number, but things are progressing in the right way. But with that said, also, the fact of acquisition, I think, is a pretty interesting condition because things keep on changing all the time. And while you will see that one of our ambition is actually increasing the maturity of UX at scale, keep on acquiring company is some sort of a handbrake, basically, right? That comes in all the time. We might be lucky. We might actually acquire a company that has a better maturity than us. That's great, right? But sometimes we're not that lucky. So it's always like a continuous change. And also, this implies the fact that you really know where to pick your fights. 55 is not an endless number on 65,000 employees. So you really need to know where to put your energy, right? It's not endless. Now, who is presenting? Who am I in the first place, right? So my name is Rudy. I'm head of global UX at Abloy. I work centrally here in Stockholm. Together with me, I have 5 global members, so only 5 out of 55. My team has exponentially grown to like 13, 17, including CX, for example. But then everything has been absorbed by the division. We'll talk about that maybe later. That's for the best. They need to be in proximity to the customers. So that number continuously grows and actually goes back. So that's where we are. And also another component and another challenge that might be reasonable to some of you is that we are largely B2B, right? Business to business and then business to business to consumers, I would say. And this had the complication that we not only have to do with users and understanding the users, but a lot to do with understanding the customers and the final users of those customers as well. And then, can one size really fit all, right? So can one solution when it comes to approaching UX and scaling UX into a company like this works? No, of course not. So we suddenly and very early realized that, first of all, it's not going to be easy, but secondly, it's not going to be one go. It's not going to be one thing that will work for all the company we will acquire, that will work tomorrow as it worked yesterday, right? It all the time change. And when I say, does one solution fits all, what is that all, by the way? So if we start by all the experiences that at least we map within the work we do, that sits with different parts of the organization. We have, for sure, employee experience. That is something that we're involved with. That's the reason why it's in blue. We have the brand experience, which is our promise, right? What we promise our customer they will get. And also, as I say all the time to our C-level, is your reputation when you go in front of the shareholders. Because sometimes they have a hard time to understand, what is the brand experience after all. And we say that is your reputation, basically, right? This is the promise you give to the customers and the company you buy. And then The other two parts that are very complex, and we keep on trying to push on the edge of the operation, is customer experience and product experience. And the reason why we want this actually to be built and to be done at the edge, that's the reason why my team gets shorter and shorter, but the UX organization gets bigger and bigger, is because we want these people to be close to their customers, right? Our customer will tell us what they need, and then we will have to interpret, how we can solve their problem, really. And also it means, that we need a constant change, right? I mean, adaptability, I guess we are all aware of how adaptable designers has to be by their nature. I think we heard before something very interesting about understanding the context, understanding the challenge, adapt to the situation. We are no different to that. So adaptability and the way you adapt your own strategy to that is a key thing. And then what is our strategy then in the first place, right? So what we did 4 years ago, because then we realized that actually the division, the different part of the business wanted to have operation, UX, operation, CX operation in their parts, right? So we actually developed a strategy. Is essentially 5 big pieces. First is the core, right? What is our belief, basically, right? What do we want to actually drive as UX community? The second one, which is a huge one, I will touch upon that in a minute, is about customer journey and anyhow customer experience. What is that? How do we handle that? Where does that happen? Then we go to, apply flexible adoption. We really need to meet the team where they are. It's always going to be different. It's always changing all the time. How do we really manage that? Implement and measure. How do you really implement that in teams that are so different? Do we pilot? How do we measure? And lastly is about empower the team. Because as I said before, my team is very small. Most of the team is actually, in the divisions, in the business, right? We want them to own this, right? We want them to own this at the end of the day. So the first one is about defining the core. And for us, the core is actually just the precondition, something that we can all agree as a UX community within our company that we think is the right thing to do. And it's basically a platform that makes, all the UX designer being able to grow on that, but have a similarity in the language they use and have some point of reference not to be lost. And it's very easy to be lost in this kind of size of operation. So the first one is about design ops, people, process, and toolbox. Nothing crazy. This is something we've been developing internally. The second one is about UX research. I think we heard that before. Is the most fragile part in my company. I think that maybe that can relate into many companies. We heard that before, that it's very expensive to do research. And sometimes the answer about, I need to go out and listen to and observe my customers, I'm gonna be back in a month, that's a hard sell. That's a hard sell. The third one is about UI design, specifically on design system. The idea of efficiency, the idea of reuse and reuse at scale in this complication is quite of a powerful message. So when we talk about UI design, it's not only compliance to UI guidelines, etc., but it's really about doing it at scale and doing it well. And the last one is about digital accessibility. For 2 reasons, we have to do it as everybody else because of the European Act, but also it's the right thing to do at the end of the day, independently if you are into a B2B or B2C context. The second one is about mapping customer journey and touch point. We suddenly realized that actually the biggest driver for the UX maturity is understanding the problem. We saw that, we saw the process before about the double diamond and making sure that you actually get enough insight to do the right thing in the first place, right? So the first point you see there, build an organization for it, is because there was not an organization for that. We realized that 4 years ago, talking to our management and say, okay, how do we do this, right? How do we actually understand and meet our customer in their journey, do an analysis, understand the touch point, and then from there, see where to act? The answer was well, we don't know. And the answer from us, well, we need to know. And therefore, we actually built an organization. And as before, that organization was actually built centrally. That was part of my team. And now it's gone because it has been distributed and absorbed in the business. So if there is something that we see repeating in our operation is this growth centrally, this piloting centrally, and then the absorption, basically that being absorbed by the operation, and that is for the best. We want them to own it. We want them to drive it, right? And really what we're looking when it comes to customer journey is really to have solid and positive experience, we call it. I think, I'm an old person, I think I had enough, at least in my context, to hear about we want to ship something great, we want to ship something super great, we want to have the best of this, the best of that. It's fine, it is fine, but you have to have a solid base to get something great out of it, right? So what we mean by that is that we want, throughout the journey of our customer, to be good, solid, and positive, and then if something is gonna be great, that is very welcome. But we don't want to have anything that is below good in the first place. And this goes back to what I said before. You need to pick your fights. That's how we pick our fight. Third part is about apply flexible adoption and make the team where they are. We actually came up with a framework. There are tons of framework. I think this worked just for us because it was very simple. This gold, silver, and bronze. I can give you an example because of this acquisition that we do all the time when we talk about UI and design system. So we have multiple design systems. Some of them are developed, some of them are only at the design stage, and some of them actually do not exist. So that means that we have UI guideline, for example. So when we acquire a company, we actually ask them, how do you want actually to use what we offer? And if they're gold, they use the design, they use the development, if we can agree on a common technology. If we can't, if you use anything different, let's say React or whatever, they will be on a silver, then they get the benefit just out of the design. If they want to do as they want to do, then we just rely on guidelines, and that's for us is a bronze. But the idea here is just to give up and forcing everybody to be gold. It's not going to be gold. It's not going to be gold on day one, right? So just accept the condition. The fourth one is about implement and measure. And implementing and measuring impact. How do we measure that? Basically, we measure few metrics. We have UX metrics for sure, at least 2 that we're really convinced that should be the baseline for what we do. But actually, we want adoption of the process, and that is also difficult. A new process in a new company is always difficult, and this keep on being difficult all the time. And also with maturity. We saw, I think, 20 minutes ago or so, the Nissan Norman maturity scale. We use that. We map that every 2 years. We have seen progress, but going back to the first thing I said before, I wish the progress would be better, but the fact of acquiring company might give us a bump, or might not give us a bump. So we never know what the result is going to be. And then the last one is about, making sure that they have ownership, because, we realize, and I realize that, we do very little product from my team because we are a central function. And no matter how mature my organization is, we want the maturity to be where the product actually can benefit from maturity, right? So we want this team, even more now, to actually take in those strategies and build their own. This is what we're discussing with them as we speak, actually, to try to actually, them, on the backbone of our own framework, to build their own strategy. We want them to drive this. We want them to own it. And then where are we now? After, quite some time in the making. I mean, some numbers are good. Some numbers could be better, but, I think we are leading in the right direction, we feel. And how do we see some positiveness when it comes to, overall result? One is about, stronger UX adoption, and then we can see by the number of the designers, there are 55. I think we should be 500, if you ask me. Yeah, it's going to take a bit of a time, but, we see the number steadily growing. It means that there is better understanding about the value of UX and why we should spend our money when it comes to UX. We see better design reuse. We are talking specifically about UI pattern and design system. UI pattern is vital for us. We really don't want people to rebuild something that has been built before, which we do all the time because we acquire a company. And this is actually sometimes a very crisp conversation we have with our CTOs to say every time you see a button in one of your screens of your designer, think about $2,000. This is what most likely that button has cost you for no reason, So anytime you see a button, question why you have spent those money there, right? And not somewhere else, most likely in research, if you ask me. And with that said, I think let's leave some numbers, and I'll tell you what we have learned, or what I've learned out of this journey, which is still ongoing, and it took some time, is act the compass. Some of you might know what this object is. This is actually an Officine Panerai, which is an Italian watchmaker that during the 60s was actually building compass for the Navy. The idea with acting the compass is that my company is quite big, right? And we are too few to actually change the direction that we want the company to take, especially when it comes to be more dedicated to users, be more dedicated to customers, etc. So I would rather convince my management to do the right thing instead of actually fighting to move the needle. So to me, that means that if our ship is going north, I would rather convince my manager that the north is not there, but is rather there. And that's why, for example, we have built a CX organization for that. Because they did realize, they didn't know where that North Star was, right? So we moved the north. So we call it Hack the Compass. The second thing that you don't see very well, sorry for that, but it's a marathon. It takes time. It depends from the organization you're in. Sometimes things goes very quickly. If you work within a product, I mean, you see progress very quickly. But when you want to do things at scales, things that are sustainable, things that last a long time, and they are embedded into an organization, be prepared. It's going to take time. It's going to take time. And it's going to pay off at the end. Adjust, adjust, adjust. So what you see there, those two products are those two lovely speakers from Bang & Olufsen, Bell Lab 5. Really nice product. I wish I have them. I would buy them at some point. But the point is that I don't know how much you know about speakers or anything, but when you actually put a speaker into a room, anything you change in that room, it means that you have to adjust the speakers to get a good sound. Those speakers self-calibrate, but in general, right? So that means that if you had a sofa, you need to recalibrate. If you had a carpet, you need to recalibrate. And that goes back into the merging, right? Every new company, you have to calibrate. When something changes, you have to calibrate. So the only constant is really change. And you need to be fine with the change and the recalibration, right? And sometimes it feels, you really need to be fine with that, because sometimes it doesn't feel great, you know. You said, okay, I've been working for like a year to sell this in with the organization, and now changes, you know, condition has changed, and we need to change. And you should be fine with that. That's my message. I'm gonna get some water, but be okay to be alone, very alone. As I said, we started in 4 people. I felt very alone. I don't feel very alone anymore, but I felt very alone. But I mean, the point of this is not to be like 1 or 10 or 15 or whatever in your organization. Be okay in being alone, defending something in a room, but it seems like you are the only one that care about that. That's my point, right? You will be, I've always been, you know, in a room with people that not necessarily understood the value of what I was saying, not necessarily actually embrace the fact that I was asking for more money or more people or putting focus into something. So be okay that you will be alone, you know, and that will be a constant thing, and it's the right thing to do. We heard before, you know, being uncomfortable in a room, that's a good signal, because I think you're changing the status quo. But being okay to be alone, actually, over time. Water in the pipes. This is how we actually managed to convince our organization to put a bet on CX. And this was actually the conversation with our CCO. And we said, well, when we need insight from our customer, we don't just start a research, because those insights will come too late. You have to have insight throughout, all the time. And that was the parallelism to the water. If you need water from a tap, it's not that you open the water in the central part, right? The water has to run through the pipes all the time for you to be able to spill water when you need it. So we said to them, we have to study CX, customer journey, you know, insight from our customers all the time, so we can use them when we want, not just when we need them, because it's too late. Then speak the language. I have 2 daughters. One is 8, the other one is 4 months old. I don't talk to them in the same way, I guess, right? And that's exactly the same thing with the business, right? As we said before, try to understand when you are in a room and the people in front of you do not understand what you're saying, that you are the problem in that case, right? Because you want to drive change. So speak the right language, understand the right audience, make sure that something is important for them. That's very important. That's very, very important. Talk about risk. You know, risk is very uncomfortable, and I like that very much in my conversation with the CTOs, you know, and the technology leaders, because nobody likes risk, right? Anytime you put on a table something that is risky, nobody wants to put a sign on that, because that's not good. So be prepared, or at least that's the technique we use to talk about risk. Some of the conversation I have with our CTOs is about they are ready to launch a new product, a new feature, you name it, a new app, for example, right? We ask them, okay, what was the investment for this? $5 million, whatever. Have you tested with your user? No. Are you sure? Then it's a bit puzzled. Why? This might not work. Do you know? This might not work. You might have risk, 2 years of work, $5 million, the reputation of some teams because you don't want to actually validate what you do. Are you ready to take that risk? And most likely you see, a little bit step back, maybe we should do something about it, but risk we have found. And to me, this is obviously after the fact that you talk about value, right? But when you are done with talking about value, when you're done to talking about why you should do something good, if you see that doesn't come through, talk about risk, because that's a very powerful work. And that knows what you buy. I mean, one of the things that we actually started this year is to help the team that handle the acquisition. And again, we acquire 20 companies every year, so it's a constant thing. It happens every month, right? And for us, it means that, the maturity level will fluctuate. And for us, it means that we need to address and understand what those teams are doing, where they are, and meet them where they are, and so on. So we want them actually to include, an assessment about the UX of their products, and also about the CX of their organization, for example, right? A simple thing is like NPS, for example, Net Promoter Score. And the reason why we bet on NPS is because it's a global metrics. We have adopted it, right? People have understood it. It's quite simple to explain. We want our customer to tell other customers how great we are. We want them to actually stay longer and spend more money. That's at the end what NPS is. Even though I don't think that NPS is the best metric for what we're doing, it's one metric, right? So at least it opened up the door for the fact that you have to confront your customer about what you do. But I mean, knowing what you buy in a company like us, we think will get us in a very long run much, much better. Having an assessment done in the quality of the product we buy from a company, we think that is going to have an item on the list which will be called UX, and therefore somebody will have to be responsible for it. Each client is different. So, I mean, my company is a global company. We operate everywhere, right? I mean, and the challenges we have are enormously different. I mean, we sell everything from, I saw some keys before, that's our business, We sell everything from like very analogical product, like a key, a padlock, most like, most of the keys of your house are actually part of our company, up to anything into like how you manage access for like an airport, et cetera, et cetera. Every client is different. Every team has different challenges, right? I mean, they do different products. So everything is different. So make sure you know where you sit, And then cultures are very different. Of course, again, being a global organization, you can imagine we want people to be in the organization. Cultures are different. It's always forgotten. It's always, overlooked, very easy to work with. This is something we take for granted when we hire people. Nobody asks that question because, of course, the answer is yes. But the truth is that, from a culture to another culture, you need to build a bridge. Right? Sometimes that bridge is there, sometimes the bridge is broken, sometimes nobody thought about the bridge. So be very mindful about how you actually get together, team from different culture. Know your customers. And we heard that before, and that's a cliche. You have to know your customers, right? Even though quite a lot of time, we don't really, in many companies, if you ask, who is this a customer? Where does this come from other than one of your customers telling you that they needed this or that? But where is the evidence? What problem is that solving, right? What is the job to be done? But what I refer here specifically is like, know your customer better than your project manager. If you know your customer better than your organization, then you're going to have a much easier life. You can challenge them back all the time. And challenging the status quo, the fact that they typically would do something that they have done before because it's very comfortable, is key. I can give an example on this. So once we were very interested to understand what sustainability means for some of our customers. So, we did a big voice of the customer, study into like America, EMEA, et cetera, to find out what does it mean. And it goes all the way from like, some customer being very sensitive about the impact they have and the operation impact they have, in the society. Some being less sensitive, how much is this going to cost me at the end of the month, when it comes to energy consumption, etc. But for some of them, it meant that some of these people is using an app from us, right? Sustainability for them means they want to have a dark mode in their app so their battery lasts the entire day, so they can do their job. So sometimes, things might take a different turn. that you might not know. And back to this, when we actually talk to this project manager, we talk about sustainability. And they said, well, how do we measure that? And we said, this is what your customers say to us. And that's the reason why you have to deliver on this. Because one of the reasons they will say that your product is not good is because not only you haven't thought about sustainability in the first place, but you haven't translated what sustainability means for them. So that's what I mean by know your customer better than your organization is going to take you a long way. And last one, I think it's the last slide, yeah, is remove friction. So it's very easy when you go to a team, you know, you have 5 designers, and you say, well, you need to double the amount of designers because, I mean, the ratio is off, you know, there is too much to do, etc. But will you actually, you know, double the amount of value you will bring just by doubling the people? Might not. But work on the friction, right? Try to understand every blocker, anything that can be done better. There are huge gaps in the processes. There are huge gaps when you hand over design for developer, for example, right? Try to understand how to lean. When you are at the bottom of that, then you can double the amount of designers. But I mean, you know, remove every single thing that had friction. And I think that's it. And I think I'm on time. Yes, there you go. Cool, nice. Thank you. Thank you.